Alright, here we are back with the second part of the One Piece arc rankings. If you haven't seen the first part, I'd recommend watching that, though in like a couple days I will go ahead and combine the two and you could probably just watch that from there. But in that video I went from number 32 to 17. This time we're going from number 16 all the way to number 1. Hope y'all enjoy this video because I got a lot more to say this time. And yeah, let's get it rolling. Up next for number 16, I've got Arlong Park. This is the arc that everyone says One Piece quote unquote gets good at, which I personally disagree with. Like I said, Baratie is the one that really hooked me, and a lot of people got hooked from just the first few episodes alone. But I can completely understand why Arlong Park has this reputation. Whether it be the manga, the anime, or even the live action, this arc is really good. The emotional moments hit hard, the action was on point, and Arlong was also a good antagonist. If you still weren't hooked in even by the end of this arc, then I don't know what to tell you. Coming in at number 15, I have another interesting choice. For this, I'm choosing the post-Enies lobby arc. I don't think people talk about just how crazy this arc is enough. For being so short, there's so much heat packed within it. We find out about the Yonko as well as Garp being Luffy's grandfather. Frankie joins the crew and Usopp rejoins the crew. And of course at the end we have the Ace and Blackbeard fight, which even to this day is still such a great fight. And overall, this arc was a really good way to close out one of the most important sagas in the entire series. Speaking of post arcs though, at number 14 I've got post war. After the events of Marineford, we get to see the toll it's taken on Luffy, and after nearly 500 episodes and 600 manga chapters do we finally get Luffy's backstory. This arc does a huge service to developing his character. We see Luffy completely broken down and at his lowest point, which of course he's had low points in the series before, but this was completely different. There's a lot of good moments and also a lot of very emotional scenes, some of which hitting pretty hard, like the Garp and the Dawn scene. I think this arc does an absolutely great job at not only closing out this saga, but closing out the entirety of the pre-time skip portion. For the 13th spot on the list, I'm gonna give it to the Zou arc. Zou was straight up just Oda flexing his world building skills. This place is one of the most unique locations in the entire series. An entire kingdom full of animal people located on the back of a giant elephant. I genuinely don't even know how he came up with it, but it works so damn well. World building aside, this arc is yet again another showcase of just how good Oda is at building things up. This arc was the perfect bridge between Dressrosa and Whole Cake Island, and not only does it set things up for Whole Cake Island, but Wano as well. So yeah, Zou was genuinely a great experience, and that's why I had to place it here at number 13. Up next for number 12, I'm gonna give it to Jaya. I know I talked about this with the previous entry, but when it comes to building up hype, I think Jaya is an even better example. Not to mention the arc itself has some really good storytelling. The execution of Bellamy's character and how he's the complete opposite of Luffy was done very well, and it makes it all the more satisfying when Luffy knocks the absolute dog shit out of him. Not only that, but the theme of having dreams and not giving up until you fulfill them was handled perfectly. Blackbeard's introduction and the speech he gives in this arc is still one of the best and most powerful in One Piece. And as I'm looking back at each arc for this video, I just can't stop revisiting the scene. It's just so good. Speaking of character introductions though, Blackbeard isn't the only major one we get this arc. Since in episode 151, genuinely one of the best episodes in the anime, we get introduced to the Gorosei, Kuma, Doflamingo, Sengoku, Whitebeard, and of course the reveal of the Blackbeard pirates at the end of the episode. Not to mention this is also the same episode Luffy knocked out Bellamy, so you kind of get what I mean when I say it's one of the best. And Jaya overall is an amazing arc, but it was kind of hard to pick between this and the arc that I have at the 11th spot, which is none other than Skypiea. Skypiea, the arc that for a while convinced so many people that you could skip it and not miss out on anything important, which as most of you watching probably know by now is complete BS. This arc plays a huge role when it comes to certain things later in the series, most importantly as it relates to the reveal of Gear 5. And with it playing such a huge role for some of these later arcs, it's made me appreciate Skypiea so much more than when I watched it several years ago. As for the arc itself, in my opinion, it's probably the funniest in the series. That pre-time skip humor truly peaked here for me. Then you have the main antagonist of this arc, Enel, who was just so good and posed as such a huge threat that it made me remember how forgettable his henchmen were. The fights were pretty good with just about everyone getting a bit of action. And last but not least, this is yet again another arc where Oda is just flexing his world building skills. The land of Skypiea is another very unique location, and I love the lore that we get about this place. Till this day, I still think this arc is underrated, and I could go on and talk about it longer, but for now, it's time to head into the top 10. Every arc from this point on really ranges from amazing to straight up peak of shonen. And to kick things off, I'm gonna give the 10th spot to Impel Down. Impel Down was genuinely such a fun ride all the way through, and was also a fun concept in and of itself, with Luffy having to break into a prison and try to rescue Ace. And not just any ordinary prison, no, this place has 6 different levels and holds the worst of the worst. I love how Oda took inspiration from Dante's Inferno and just did his own thing with it, with each floor having its own distinct punishment. Impel Down also gave us a chance to see some characters that we hadn't seen in a while, like Crocodile, Mr. 3, Mr. 1, and of course Bon Clay, who was the undisputed MVP of this arc. And it was just really great seeing these characters who were antagonists before help Luffy out in his situation. Not only this, but we get to meet some important characters like Ivankov, Magellan, and of course Jinbei. This arc, in my opinion, does best when it comes to building things up. With Ace's execution getting closer and closer and the Paramount War on the horizon, I truly felt the tension building up throughout it, and I think that this was an amazing way to close things off before the most important and crucial arc in One Piece. After Impel Down, I'm gonna give the 9th spot to Wano, the arc that was still ongoing when I caught up to the series. And I'm sure many of y'all can also relate, since currently this is both the anime and manga's longest arc. I remember catching up around the end of the first act and would continue to read week to week, giving me my first taste of the weekly One Piece manga experience. And I gotta say, it was definitely a bit rough around the edges. Now, obviously, I don't think Wano's a bad arc, and reading it weekly 100% had its moments, but there were some points where it felt like it dragged and it felt a bit slow. But now that it has been a few years since this arc is finished, I can finally look back and judge it as a whole. And I gotta say, yeah, Wano is heat. Yeah, nah. This was genuinely such a fun period to be a manga reader of the series, and One Piece as a whole was definitely getting a lot more popular at this time, specifically in the West. And by the time the Gear 5 chapter came out, which is hands down one of the best in the manga, there was just so much hype around it. Also, can't forget that this was the birth of Agenda Piece, which would go on to spawn some of the funniest memes I've ever seen from the anime community, hands down. Anyways, I know I've been talking a lot about the community during this period, but I want to come back to the arc itself. Wano's a bit different than everything else since it's split into 3 acts. The first one I thought was a pretty good introduction. The second, it was just okay if I'm being honest, but the third act is where this arc truly shines in my opinion. If this act were its own separate arc, it would definitely be higher and would probably crack the top 5. Anyways though, Wano, overall fantastic arc, and it was pretty close between this and the 8th spot, being Alabasta, the climax to everything else that was built up in this saga. And let me just say, it paid the hell off. In my opinion, I think this blew everything that came prior out of the water, from the stuff with Vivi to the politics within the country of Alabasta, and of course the man himself, Crocodile, who was genuinely such an intimidating antagonist. This arc was just so damn good. Plus, each of the Straw Hats got their time to shine. Zoro, Sanji, Nami, even Usopp and Chopper got active. Speaking of which, this was the arc where I really started to warm up to Usopp. Before, I thought he was pretty annoying and didn't really offer that much character wise, but after this arc I definitely gained a bit of respect for him. And then to wrap things up, you have this arc's conclusion. The final battle with Luffy and Crocodile is one of the best moments pre-time skip, and for me is definitely a series highlight. After losing twice, he finally defeats Crocodile, who seemed damn near unstoppable this entire saga, and he does it by using his own blood to punch him. That is some raw stuff. And not to mention, in the anime they used New World Symphony in the background as the OST. Just absolute cinema all around. Anyways, Alabasta overall is an amazing arc, though I will admit it isn't perfect. For example, I think the beginning was pretty slow, and Pell's fake out death will always be dumb to me, but the peaks in this arc completely overshadow those lows. Coming in at number 7, and I'm gonna be honest, it was really close between this and Alabasta, I'm placing Dressrosa. Dressrosa was and somewhat still is a controversial arc, and of course this is mainly due to its pacing, especially in the anime. And even with it being over a decade since this arc ended, there's still some moments where it definitely dragged. Still though, I cannot stress enough how great this arc truly is. Before Wano, this was One Piece's longest arc, and just like Wano, we got introduced to a ton of new characters, like Bartolomeo and the rest of the Straw Hat Grand Fleet, and even a new admiral being Fujitora, who's a character that I desperately want to see more of. There were also a bunch of good fights this arc, like Zoro vs Pika, Law, Dofi and Fujitora's fight, and of course Luffy vs Dofi, giving us some of the best showcases of Haki that we had seen up to that point. But out of everything, there is one reason as to why I'm putting this above Alabasta and Wano, and this is simply because of the antagonist. I already gave Crocodile my praises, and Kaido is also a really good antagonist. But for me, Don Quixote do Flamingo takes the cake for not only being the best out of the three, but in my opinion, the best antagonist in One Piece. This guy is one of the most cruel and cold-hearted characters this series has had to offer, and understanding the circumstances that led him to being this way made him all the more interesting and compelling. Anyways though, there are a bunch of other great moments that I didn't even go over, like the introduction of Gear 4, Law's backstory, or even the lore of Dressrosa as a location. But for the sake of time, I'll just keep things brief. Dressrosa is another amazing and strong arc within the story, and that's why I'm giving it the 7th spot. At the next spot for number 6, I'm gonna place Whole Cake Island. Whole Cake Island has such a unique setup, with us finding out that Sanji's family is making him get an arranged marriage. Not only do we find out that he's from a royal family, but he's getting an arranged marriage to one of Big Mom's daughters, and Whole Cake Island is where this is gonna take place. Yet again, Oda's world building really shines in this arc, with Whole Cake Island being this sort of evil version of Candyland. Though we do get some lore and find out this place wasn't always the way it is. This was also the same flashback where we found out that Big Mom is a cannibal. Anyways, speaking of Big Mom, I thought she was a solid antagonist, but without a doubt, the villain that stole this arc was Katakuri. Katakuri is one of the best antagonists in the series, and he has one of my personal favorite designs. His fight with Luffy is top tier, even though the anime did drag it out a little bit. Tossing all of that to the side, without a doubt, the best thing about this arc is what it did for Sanji's character. This was sort of his redemption, since for most of post time skip prior to this arc, he was just used as a gag. But here he gets some of the best development we've seen from a Straw Hat since Luffy in post-war. We get a bunch of emotional moments with him, like his fight with Luffy, as well as his tragic backstory with his family. By the end of this arc, I like Sanji's character a lot more, and it makes me hope that Oda expands the backstories and lore of the other Straw Hats before the story ends. Oh, and also Brook MVP.
Yes, sir!
Now, heading into the top 5. To start things off, I'm gonna give the 5th spot to Egghead. Yes, this in my opinion is so far the best post-time skip arc, though depending on how the rest of Elbaf plays out, this may change. Anyways, I remember I made a video talking about Egghead a few years ago, and in that video I said that this arc really feels like we're entering the series endgame. We get some huge things dropped on us this arc. We finally got to meet Vegapunk, and we also got some lore on Joy Boy. Not to mention, there were some truly epic moments this arc, like Shanks one-tapping Kid and his crew. You had Aokiji versus Garp, the return of CP9 and Zoro's fight with Lucci, and then you have Luffy not only fighting an admiral but a member of the Gorosei. And then I have to shed some light on one of the saddest backstories in One Piece, being Kuma and Bonnie's. I can honestly go on about Egghead all day, but obviously for the sake of this video I won't. But this arc right here was the perfect way to set the tone for One Piece's final saga. Now up next, coming in at number 4 is Sabaody Archipelago. Talk about a way to open up a saga. Sabaody starts off pretty normal and doesn't seem like anything too crazy at first, but then bang, Rayleigh introduction, bang, whole new group of characters who rival the Straw Hats, then bang, Luffy punches a world noble, bang, new admiral appears, and bang, Straw Hats get completely separated from one another. This arc doesn't let you breathe, but in the best way possible. All of these events were completely unexpected, and that being the case made them all the more impactful. The Straw Hats getting separated is one of the most emotional scenes in the anime and manga. Seeing each member just disappear one by one while Luffy has to watch it all unfold, and then seeing him completely break down in tears managed to give me the most hopeless feeling while watching the show for the first time. I don't think it gets talked about enough just how truly devastating this moment is. I knew they were gonna reunite at some point, obviously, but the simple fact that Luffy wasn't gonna be with any of his crew for the rest of the saga just did something to me. And because of how effective all of this was, that's why I had no other choice but to place this arc here. And now we enter the top 3. These arcs to me are truly the peaks of One Piece and probably just shonen in general. If you said any of these were the best, I wouldn't even begin to argue with you. To kick things off, coming in at number 3 is Water 7. This arc knew how to create so much drama and tension, and just the sheer amount of suspense had me glued to my screen the entire time. This arc can manage to be funny at one moment, then be a complete roller coaster of emotions in the next. The inner conflict between the crew surrounding Mary was handled phenomenally, as we slowly see it break the crew apart, and Luffy versus Usopp is probably the most gut-wrenching fight in the series. Then you had the mystery and reveal of who CP9 is and Robin's association with them, one of the most unexpected plot twists for me at least, and it still sits in the back of my mind. With all of this going on, you still had that huge flood that was supposed to hit Water 7, which in turn created a whole nother layer of tension and panic. The storytelling here was just undeniably top tier, 100% some of the best in the franchise. and because of this, it's earned the number 3 spot. Now, while I do think Water 7 is a top tier and amazing example of Oda's storytelling, I think that Enies Lobby is the best out of the whole saga, which is why I'm placing it at number 2. Enies Lobby is what I think of when someone mentions Prime One Piece. I know a lot of people like Water 7 more mainly because of its storytelling and all the other stuff that I mentioned earlier, but Enies Lobby not only has amazing storytelling, but some of the best action within the series. Both of these coming together to create an arc that is damn near perfect. There are so many good moments worth mentioning. One that always comes to mind though is the Straw Hats standing before CP9 and declaring war on the world government. Luffy telling Usopp, I meant Soga Kings, to shoot down the flag gives me chills every time I see it. Then in that same scene, after learning about Robin's backstory and Luffy giving his speech, Robin's response saying that she wants to live will always be something that sticks with me. Scenes like this always remind me of why I love One Piece so much. And this scene right here is followed up by a stretch of fights involving every other Straw Hat, fighting to the best of their ability to defeat CP9 and save Robin. Luffy vs Lucci is still a top 3 One Piece fight, and I can tell you right now, it's not 3 and probably not even 2. It's just that great. Even with all of this though, the moment that was most effective to me by far has to be Mary's funeral. This was the first time I actually bawled my eyes out while watching an anime. Even with the abundance of anime I'd go on to see afterwards, there hasn't been a moment like this since. And it was over a damn boat. I still don't know what made me cry the way I did when I saw this for the first time. Maybe it was the music, maybe it was the reactions of the other Straw Hats, or maybe it was just the attachment I had to Mary and the other characters. But all I know is that this was enough to seal the deal on Enies Lobby's placement. But even with all of that, there's still one more arc that I think is even better, and it's none other than... Yeah, I know, not the most original choice, but I mean, come on, bro, it's Marineford. This is the one arc that I don't think anyone is going to be mad about its placement. This arc, to me, is what peak Battle Shonen looks like, with it being very consistent in quality and having some of the series' highest peaks. What I absolutely love about war arcs is their ability to build up hype, and whether or not they fulfill that hype, you can always expect something that'll be pivotal to the story to happen in them. And not only did Marineford have an insane level of hype all the way throughout with a ton of hype moments and great action, but boy did it have some pivotal and story altering moments, like the reveal that Ace is Roger's son, or the confirmation that the One Piece does in fact exist, and then of course the deaths of both Ace and Whitebeard towards the end of the arc, which would go on to be a sort of semblance of passing the torch on to the next generation. Speaking of Whitebeard's death though, his speech before he dies is yet again another one of the most impactful in the series. It's a scene that still gives me chills. And these are just some of the things that I not only love about this arc, but things that still sit with me years later. And this isn't even it when it comes to amazing moments in this war. You got the scene where Luffy stands up to the admirals, Doflamingo's epic speech about justice, Whitebeard absolutely demolishing Akainu, along with all the other great fights and bits of action we get to see. This arc just truly has it all. And every time I revisit it, I get reminded each time as to why I have it at the top of my list. When it comes to anime and manga, there are a lot of war arcs. Some are definitely greater than others, and some come very close to taking the crown and being the best. But for me, Marineford is still the arc that holds that crown. And not only do I think that it's the perfect war arc, but debatably the best story arc in anime and manga. And that's why, for me at least, Marineford stands at number 1 above all the rest. And with that, we have finally finished the rankings. Those were my takes on every One Piece arc up till now, except Elbaf, of course. This video was honestly such an interesting experience, since this was my first mostly unscripted video in like almost 2 years, I think. So I had to kind of try and get back into that groove. And if anything sounded repetitive or redundant in this video, then it's probably just a result of that. But hey, like I said, this is my first time doing one of these ranking videos. So if I ever end up doing more, then I'll probably get better. Anyways though, if this video ends up doing well and y'all really enjoyed it, first off, like and subscribe, or don't, it's your choice. But if this video does end up doing well, I will be uploading the Gachi Akuda video if y'all are interested. And yeah, that's really all I gotta say. Hopefully my takes weren't like too hot or anything in this video. I don't want to end up getting like completely cooked on One Piece Twitter or something. But yeah, hope you oh my god, I don't know what the hell that was, but anyways though, hope y'all enjoyed, and I'll catch y'all in the next video.